Hey, welcome to Buffalo. We got an extra special episode for you today. We are talking to Mr. Michael Binnion. Michael Binnion is an entrepreneur. He's an advocate for the energy industry, and he's a true Albertan. We're talking all things culture, politics, policy, the rule of law, and a fair amount of history of this great land that we're in.
You know, it's like on your, I guess, have you guys been in a condo on a condo board?
Yeah, I haven't, but I understand what you're talking
You know
about.
what happens, right? Like the people that were never allowed to be in charge of anything in their actual lives suddenly want to be on the condo board.
Right.
Yeah. And they're now in charge of something.
Making decisions for everybody.
And it becomes very clear why nobody let them be in charge. Well, a lot of those people end up in politics too.
Yeah.
They're like condo board people.
Huh. Yeah, I think
ambitious, but not their ambition outstrips their competency level, and they become difficult people to deal with, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of not in my backyard type people.
There's a joke on that about Rommel's generals, Rommel's officers, the Desert Fox, one.
Okay.
He tries to say it's three kinds of officers, but it basically sort of comes down to that you've got your smart and lazy, and he says they don't ever cause you any trouble. They go find somewhere that they don't cause you trouble. And then you've got your stupid and lazy, and they're not that much trouble. You have to find them somewhere where they don't cause you trouble, and they won't leave you there, right? And then he says, then you've got your smart and industrious. They run the whole army. But that's how you win the battle, by making sure that those people are doing all the important things. He says, then you've got your stupid and industrious who are no end of trouble.
Yeah. Interesting.
Very
ambitious, lots of energy, but just don't get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's anyway. So I don't know, people who can deal with the constituency and that kind of big P politics, and like Jason Kenney always says, Michael, you can never be in politics because you always tell people what you think. So he says you can't be, but those people you can never let them know what you think, right?
Yeah.
It seems like that. I understand what Jason or others with the same sentiment would be saying there, but it seems like that attitude is also why we are in the state politically that we are in. Like effective people who care about what other people care about the opinions of their opposition or whatever. I don't know. It sounds very extreme as the words come out of my mouth, but I'm like, why? If a politician's job is to try to make everybody happy, then they're going to continually do nothing meaningful and nothing beneficial for an actual forward movement for the country or for the province or for the city, as we see in Calgary.
Yeah, to me, there's two trends. One is the socialization, and by that I mean socialization of the government itself.
Right.
The movement away from the independent professional bureaucrat to a ideologically motivated bureaucrat.
For sure.
Has been one big change that's happened within the Public Service Union and is in some sense a social and cultural issue independent of political parties, although they're privately. The other thing is the ugliness of politics, which I think was probably true in the late 1800s, but for a while there was a sort of certain respect for trying to have politics find the middle, find the common ground. But yeah, it's becoming a very difficult place to attract people. Because who really wants to go? Like, why would you want to go through that? They don't pay you, so why does somebody want to go through that? You have to want the power. What do you want the power for? Well, it's either to be somebody or to do something, and then you really have to want to do something to go through all of that. And we see those people. Like Stephen Harper was one of those people. Like they do come, right? Like I think Danielle's one of those people.
Wants to see something done.
She's trying to get things. She has some things she wants to get done. Jason Kenney, when he was a minister in the federal government, he had things he wanted to get done. He sort of lost the plot. Well, COVID just got him derailed, right?
Yeah. Tough time to be any kind of leader.
Blame him for how that all went down. Like, I think he was very rational and just trying to keep that united Conservative Party united. I've always appreciated the way he spells things out, and
he struggled with people like he had people who disagree with him. He had troubles dealing with that. Like his caucus started to fall apart, and he's got a little bit disparaging towards some of the people, right? Like he still is a bit, like the way he talks about Alberta separatists.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's not a way to be a leader in Alberta. Like certainly not a leader from the right or center right,
Mhm.
right? There's a lot of people who
He's
are
a nationalist.
there's a lot
too,
of-
though.
Like a
or a
true
federalist.
federalist.
yeah, I think super committed federalist, and so, but your coalition is the coalition on the right is 50% soft separatists, right?
Mhm.
They may not literally want to separate, but they definitely don't like it the way it is. So
The latest I saw, I think, was 35% hard separatists now.
yeah, well, if that's the case, then that's more than half the UCP.
Yeah.
Is that like
I
Alberta
heard it
as a
was-
whole?
Yeah, in Alberta, 35% are like for separating. There's another 30% that is in that sort of middle
Willing
ground,
to
like you
consider
said. Yeah.
I've seen polling
Like
it has it as
sovereignty,
low as 15 as well. So I think
Yeah, I guess how do you know?
who polls and what question they ask is pretty important too, right?
Yeah, right. What story they're trying to tell.
They never did get a question on that. Actually, we haven't had an election, but
The referendum one.
the referendum question, like, would you? And I'm interested to see what that question Danielle's talking about putting on that next vote around separatism. I'm curious what the question will actually be, like how it's
Yeah.
worded.
I think I'm on the panel, right?
Okay.
So the topic of should there be a question on separation was not on the agenda. So there was no up or down vote on it. It just wasn't discussed. So the what was discussed were the issues presented,
Okay.
and basically, so it was pensions, it was police force, it was collecting our own taxes, it was a series of constitutional changes. There was those things that were
Sovereignty Act.
discussed. Not specifically the Sovereignty Act, but
Seems like all parts of the firewall letter, like
those types of things were
Yeah.
on the table, and so I think the answer is going to be that yes, we should definitely have a immigration.
Okay.
Immigration. was
how
one of
the
issues.
degree to which Alberta can control the inflow of population.
Yeah. So basically, I think it was mostly about given things that Alberta can do legally under the Constitution, which things should we consider having a referendum on?
Mm.
Which is interesting. I mean, my sort of view was why, like, if we're legally allowed to do it under the Constitution, why don't we just do it?
Yeah.
Why
Why do we have to ask about it?
Didn't we have an election?
Yeah.
But I think that there is, I think there is in Alberta right-wing politics a certain sense of populism and direct democracy, and so I think there's a feeling that we need for significant change, there needs to be a popular support or mandate specifically for that. I'm not sure I agree with that, but because it's not really our system. Our system is representative government, but there's a lot of direct democracy people on the right, like in the populist part of the right, and on the left too. There's populist people on the left too that believe there should be a referendum on key issues, right?
So is your background, Michael, is it are you a lawyer background or what? How do you get into this? How do you know so much about the Constitution? I keep hearing people talk about various parts of it, and I'm like, I guess I should maybe read it.
Never read it?
I've never read it all the way through. No.
It's a long read. I don't know. Like first of all, I took finance at the U of A, and then I took accounting, and then I became a tax accountant. So as a tax accountant, you start to get into the law, but it's a very specific, strict construction type of the law. But you start to get some genuine legal training, which you get as part of business, anyways. But then I just ended up in because it was of the interest of mine, I ended up on the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Then there's always constitutional arguments that come up. And then I was on the Canada Historian Free or Manning Center. And so you're always coming up in movement politics around what's constitutional, what's not constitutional. So it became an interest. And then I just have I've published a peer-reviewed paper on geology in an international magazine. So I'm not a geologist, but I get all these emails all the time. Dr. Binnion, would you like to? I'm not a doctor, right? I don't have a PhD, but like I always say to people, like you can read. I can read. I mean, you don't have to be credentialed to know something, right?
Right.
And mostly when I went to school, I didn't really go to lectures. I just read. So I didn't, if I wasn't, I read the textbooks, I read the materials, I went and wrote the tests, or I wrote my essay, but I tended to skip all the lectures, right? And
That's kind
and
of the same
so
way.
so what else does a university do for you besides the lectures
Right.
and sort of some guide around some
Indoctrination.
guiding you through an agenda? But other than that, why can't you just go learn all that? You can learn all that stuff for yourself. What can't you learn for yourself if you choose to, right?
Right. No, I agree with that.
Yeah, so I've got a peer-reviewed paper on the Constitution, which is this how Alberta wins thing. One on, so I would call it peer review light, on carbon pricing and carbon leakage, and the other one on geology. And the reason for that was they were just all things that really interested me. And so then I delved into them, and they've got a book I'm trying to get published now on
Oh, nice.
belief formations. That's basically a political sociology book.
How people form beliefs and carry them.
Yeah, basically just what we looked at is you look at what's, if you want to sort of back up, like what's politics and sort of how does that affect society and business, and then the whole Breitbart thing, what's upstream from politics is culture,
Right.
but what forms culture is individuals believing things, and then
Believing things
Common-
together.
a common set of beliefs that
Yep.
becomes something that you say, hey, this is a useful belief for
Interesting.
a large consensus of people to believe in this thing, and then that becomes a belief that gets passed down.
Yeah.
Well, that becomes culture.
Right.
That's culture. So, but how do people form those beliefs in the first place? Right. So then that becomes psychology and sociology, and then I'm believing, well, if you can start to, if you can engineer what people believe, you can start to engineer culture, and if you engineer culture, you start to engineering politics, right?
Which we've
Right.
seen that recently.
This is what's happening.
It's crazy.
This is what the last 20 years has been, or longer, really.
It's 2 generations now. I think it's become obvious. It really sort of starts like the Reformation, which is what sort of created this idea of the, I'm not sure, it's the independent person, like the independent man, right?
Individualism.
Individual,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
That person who could struggle themselves with God and society, as opposed to just
Us.
be part of it.
Right.
And that really all came as the church started to fall apart, as the monopoly on belief and culture.
Yeah.
So
you're going back 200 years now, or a lot
yeah,
further,
so it starts
further.
the Reformation, right?
Yeah,
so
right.
The Reformation and the Enlightenment, and
Yeah.
creating that human being who can themselves be at sort of a center of society in a way. I'm at the
Yeah.
center of my society now, right?
Right.
But what I've realized is that those people who believe in those sort of universal ideas feel that they are inalienable things. Like that idea of inalienable rights.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're inalienable and exist, it sort of becomes like if you read through the 18th century philosophers, they'll all in some sense go to that there's this, the right to be equal, the right, these are
All men are
these are
created
God-given
equal.
rights.
Yeah, right.
These are God-given
At
rights.
the same time that they take God out of the equation.
Well, but they're beliefs. So when people said these are inalienable, they exist. Therefore, I have rights.
Right.
Therefore, I can wrestle with God and society myself. But those people who didn't necessarily believe in those inalienable rights, they don't have any problem engineering the culture. And those people who do believe them go, well, why would you need to engineer them? They're inalienable things that exist independently of us. It's like reality in a sense. And so we've been allowing for, I don't know, I think it really started sort of since the Cultural Revolution in the 60s. We've really started to have that the collectivists have been very strongly re-engineering those beliefs. And the people that believe that they're inalienable things, they believe they don't need to be defended or engineered because they exist as independent things, right? You feel what I'm saying? Like it's like it would be like if you went back 300 years earlier or 400 years earlier, nobody would have occurred to you that you needed to defend that God exists or that the church exists because it's an inalienable fact, right?
I think it was maybe.
So we're being undermined.
Yeah,
For sure, we're being undermined.
These so-called inalienable rights are being undermined, which is the very premise for why there should be individual liberty in the first place. Without that sort of premise, then there is no obvious reason you should have individual rights or liberties. Why should you have them? We're just
So they get
people,
slowly
and
taken away.
we're just people who naturally work in collective, cooperative societies where there's always a hierarchy, and why should you have an individual right in that hierarchy? Why can't you be a slave? We've seen in most societies that's how it works.
Yeah.
That's why this time we live in is so. If you look back, like where have there been societies like this? The Greeks, maybe, right? The Romans to some extent.
But America,
But they were still slave-based economies. They had hierarchies of you're a citizen or you're not a citizen, you're a citizen or you're a slave. And if you were a citizen, then you did have certain rights. But so it's not unique, but it's near unique because we've now got energy and machines that allow ordinary people not to have to be slaves, and they can also have these same rights that only the elites in Greek and Rome could have. So it's just amazing, amazing time we live in, and it's just slipping away from us. And I don't think people are noticing.
No.
Some people are, but
I would say, well, go ahead.
I was going to ask, was it the American Constitution that kind of set the path that was different from any other society by like establishing those inalienable rights?
No. It happened in Britain.
In Britain? Oh.
Yeah, like all of the people that wrote the American Constitution were themselves leading 18th century philosophers. But I would say that, before them was Adam Smith and some of the great philosophers that came out of England and who the sort of the people that became the Whigs and who re-argued society from the point of view of that God had given these inalienable rights that led to these individual liberties and rights. And British liberty, like there's a great quote in the founding debates of Canada where one person said they were arguing against creating Canada, and their argument was, I will take British liberty over democracy anytime. And I thought, what a strange thing to say. Isn't democracy liberty? And I realized, no, it isn't. Because how many places have we seen where there's democracy and no liberty, and it doesn't work that well?
Yeah.
So how do you have a society where I'm going to give you the right to vote without the responsibility of your vote?
Right.
And of course it doesn't work. And so if you don't have a foundational sense of liberty, so let's call it British liberty is where it started,
Can you
right?
define that?
So British liberty being these ideas of inalienable rights that mean that individuals have liberty, the right to an inalienable right to liberty and individual rights. So that sort of thinking that we have the right to be equal, we have the right to pursue happiness, that we have the right to, like, these are rights that God gave us, or if God didn't give them to us, they're just human rights, right?
Yeah.
So that was British liberty is that, right? That thinking, that as opposed to the king can do no wrong, and I don't have any rights,
And you don't own
whatever
any
the king
land.
says is whatever the king says, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that all kind of came out of the rebellion against the monarchy, and what was it, like the mid 1600s or something like that.
They were
Against the British
They
crown.
were replacing the divine right of kings,
Right.
like the
infallible status of their monarch.
yeah, like the whole right of conquest was based on God would decide,
Right.
Because whatever army won,
Right.
clearly God favored, and therefore therefore you own this land because God said so. You are the king because God said so. So British liberty was that sort of long path from the what's the
Tudor.
what's the 1200 Magna Carta?
Oh,
so
okay.
from the Magna Carta was the first time I said, well, if God can do no wrong, how did in 1215 did they tell the king that he couldn't tax them without some permission, right? Like, how do they look? Because if he was appointed by God, then anything he did was approved by God, right?
Right.
So that was the beginning of a long path towards what British liberty said was, yes, we have a king, but the king's rights are limited by the fact that we have these, as individuals, we have these inalienable rights,
Okay.
and the king cannot take away those inalienable rights. So it was a rewriting of the divine right of kings, right? Which then creates constitutional monarchies.
Right.
Right now, you have a constitutional monarchy as opposed to
A monarchy that
as opposed to a
follows a rule base.
papal church-given monarchy, right?
Right.
And then the Americans turned that into. The Americans then said that probably first nation on earth, this is we're going to embed British liberty into a democracy.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And so today, what do you see as the biggest difference between the constitutional monarchy? Like Canada's still a constitutional monarchy. Is that
British parliamentary system is sort of
Yeah.
the best, the longest, most stable form of government in the world. Right? It's the current British government is the longest form of government in the world. Like
single,
like the French
single
are
line.
the French are on the Sixth Republic, right?
Right.
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 So France's current form of government's been around for like, I don't know, 30 years or 40 years, something like that. So
Right.
Norway started in 1905. I mean, like find a country that Germany started that in 1946, right? Like, so find
This
a
is
country.
the Westminster parliamentary system. Is that what that is?
Yeah. And then, by the way, the American system, second longest.
Second to the British.
Yeah. And Canada, third.
wow?
Isn't that amazing?
And we
1867. Go back before. Find a country in the world that has had the same stable form of government since 1867.
Wow. I've never thought about it that way. And we are an extension, like our system is like a copy paste off of the British
Yep.
system, more or less. Like it's obviously the dynamics are slightly different.
We've got some interesting differences because of the French civil code being embedded into our system. So we have some things like they get 3 people on the Supreme Court, but we also get that you can have the civil code exists within the common law system. And I think that affects our parliament because the common law system is based a lot on unwritten norms and rules and constitutional conventions. And I think we can see demonstrably when you elect somebody out of the civil code system, they don't have the same sense of that you need to follow unwritten customs and conventions. And we saw that with Pierre Trudeau. We saw that with Justin Trudeau and the interference with justice. Like his minister, quite correctly, under the system, said if the prime minister is interfering in the justice system, then there's a constitutional convention that says that the minister of justice has to resign and say that there's been interference, which is what she did. But the prime minister himself said, so what? I'm going to do it anyways. Right? So this was a complete disregard for our unwritten constitution. Our constitution says you may not interfere in justice. Right? That justice has to be blind. You may not politically interfere. The prime minister did politically interfere. We all saw it for our own eyes. The minister resigned on principle, as the convention requires, and we reelected him. Because you know what? Who in the public understood how terrible that is? How terrible that is for you.
That the government can do that.
That the government interfered into your justice system that protects you from that government, and you reelected him.
Yeah, it seems insane to me.
Right? Like, so that just shows. So then you want to talk about beliefs and cultural engineering and so on and so forth that we've for so long.
What's the
we
role
don't
in
have
media?
Canadians we don't have Canadians in the streets. How dare my justice system that I know I can go to a judge and have a justice's blind adjudication of whoever might be persecuting me, including the government. How do I get protected from that? And people didn't. Not only were they not in the streets, they reelected them. But
They didn't
and I don't-
recognize the
understand.
significance of it. And
Right.
so is that the failure of the media to like point that out and I guess not educate people, but like why?
I think it's a failure of us who believe that these inalienable rights, I don't believe they are inalienable. I just think that they're extremely important to defend. If you want to defend individual rights and liberty, you have to defend those rights. And I think the idea that they're inalienable, human rights that somehow exist, means we haven't been fighting for them. We haven't been constantly reminding people you need to fight for these you need to fight for these basic human rights like justice being blind. If you don't fight for it, you'll lose for it. We have not been continuously, generation after generation, passing down that belief to the next generation to the point that, I don't know, do my kids think about this? How often do you think about this?
Every day.
Right.
Like,
But if you don't think about this, you don't know to be in the streets if somebody tries to take it away from you.
oh, well, I think,
Canada.
like, did you ever go into any of the marches for COVID stuff?
No.
Yeah, I brought my kids out to them. They were pretty good demonstrations. Like over the whole of it, it was a pretty civil expression of discontent. But I think it took however many 3 weeks of semi trucks blocking every road around Parliament, blasting horns and demonstrating and doing all of these things. Like, it took a severe disruptive demonstration to move anything. And even then, what moved was other countries. Like, you saw the United States, Britain, France, all these other sort of Western nations relaxing their laws because they didn't want to see what was happening in Canada happen in their like city centers and government centers. Trudeau dug his heels in, like continued to dig his heels in, and it was after it shut down and then several months later that things actually lifted for a different excuse kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I guess because I imagine we had Ted Morton on the other day.
Right.
And
Love Ted. Yeah.
he's so interesting and such a smart guy. I felt like I had to go do a bunch more like learning after I talked with him.
Well, the guy's an actual university. He actually is a doctor.
Yeah, he is a doctor. Yeah.
He's written and published stuff, and he's actually a PhD.
Yeah. When we were kind of talking about this, like, what do you do? Because I think my guess would be our viewers and the three of us all see these issues pretty much the same. What you do about it, I think, is where that's kind of what I would like to talk about. Is to me, I was like, well, at what point? I can't remember exactly what the thing I said to Ted was, but he was like, well, no, we have to respect the rule of law. Like, it's like you have to, all change has to happen underneath of this idea of the law. And I agree, I guess. Like, I'm not to the same degree, because I don't see the law being respected in the other direction. And I think we have a complete it's not so much a east-west thing as it is an up-down thing in my mind. Like, I think the politicians are this ruling class that view themselves as above the layer of society that they represent. You see, Tamara Lich goes to prison and gets a bunch of penalties for saying "hold the line" in the Ottawa demonstrations. 2 weeks ago, Nenshi is calling for a complete shutdown of public services across Alberta with the same words, hold the line. We're going to hold the line. Why is he not in jail? Why did he not get?
And they went after her for 7 years.
For 7 years, she's been harangued. Like, she's...
Like, rapists will get 4.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, so I'm like, how do you affect change in this? I guess your forthcoming book is going to be about culture and that sort of thing. But I just come to this place where I'm like, well, what the heck are we supposed to do here? Because it doesn't seem like there's a legal path.
So a few things in there, what you said, right? But so the last thing you said, first of all, the premise of my book is these beliefs that that individual life is valuable, that we're all equal, that we have a right to pursue the life we want to pursue, that there should be a meritocracy, that justice should be blind. These beliefs are absolutely not inalienable at all, and they are not fundamental human rights. They are things you believe that lead to a culture that leads to individual rights and liberty. And so what I'm saying is those people who believe in those things have been made a mistake to think that they're universal beliefs and they're somehow inalienable and that you don't need to defend them because they've been under attack for at least 2 generations, if not longer. Right. I mean, we had communist movement in the 1910s, so they've been under attack for even longer than the last 2 generations. And we have not been actively, proactively defending them by teaching our kids, hey, something's wrong, you can go out and do a peaceful protest, blah, blah. Like, we're not teaching, because we're just assuming they're
like
safe. Gravity. I don't need to defend gravity. Right. Gravity just is. Yeah. So we've made a mistake. Those people who believe in it have made that mistake, assuming everybody believes in them, and they don't. So that's sort of the premise.
Okay.
Relative to the point, like with Ted, I'm with him to a point, like on the rule of law issue. I mean, the idea came, and it probably was from before, but it was reinvigorated in the Cultural Revolution with all these protests against the traditionalists. And
Right.
and this is, we had an issue in society around equal rights, and there was a lot of traditionalists that felt we should stay with sort of the way things were. And then there was other people saying, no, we can't have Black people at the back of the bus. We can't have First Nations without the vote. We can't have women not being able to get the same jobs as men get if they want one, right? So the idea of being, it's okay to what they call civil disobedience, which is a way of saying break the law.
Right.
So it's okay to break the law if the law is fundamentally unjust, that it's morally okay. I'm not sure it was legally okay. And some of those people that did that, I think, were thrown in jail and so on and so forth. But we did seem to develop the idea that this is a misdemeanor. This is not a true crime, because if you believe a law is unjust, we developed this idea. I'm not sure it was ever codified in the law, but we developed a cultural idea that when a law is fundamentally unjust, you have the right to a peaceful protest, even if you're breaking the law by breaking the peace or creating mischief or so on and so forth. And this is fundamentally a very minor crime, and maybe you're going to get thrown in jail overnight, and maybe you're going to get a $500 fine, but you're sticking up for justice because you're against it, like the truckers. Right. We believe this law is fundamentally unjust. We're exercising our right. In some places, it may have gone to the level of civil disobedience, mischief, and disturbing the public peace, and so on and so forth. But we would think that we would get treated like all of those people from the 1960s to Black Lives Matter.
Right.
This is a misdemeanor.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly, it's a crime. Suddenly, mischief became a serious crime. So this then gets to, do I believe in the rule of law? Absolutely. But it gets back to the thing we just said about interference and justice. It has to be blind. Like if Black Lives Matter
nonpartisan
says these are fundamentally unjust laws, and the Prime Minister is going to come down and bend a knee, and nobody even gets a $500 fine, but what did they do different than the truckers did, who also saw a law that they felt was unjust? So this gets, again, that sort of one side who believe in collectivism and don't agree that those inalienable rights exist independent on their own. Those people got a pass, right? The people who are fighting for our individual rights and fighting for those beliefs, the government can't come in and tell me I have to wear a mask if I don't want to. They can't tell me to take a vaccine if I don't want to. They can't take away my job because I refuse to take a medical treatment that you wouldn't be allowed to do under the Geneva Convention. It's not that. It's the Nuremberg trials, right?
Right.
The Nuremberg things, like you wouldn't be allowed to do that, right? But no, we're going to put you away for 7 years and teach you a lesson. If you stand up for individual rights, man, that's a crime.
That's a crime.
But that's a bad thing.
This is a very bad thing.
That society in general isn't really upset about that, because I agree they disturbed the peace. I don't agree with Tamara Leach. This was a strictly was it a peaceful protest? I think it was, but did it break the law? Of course it did, right? They broke bylaws. But just in general, they did breach the peace. They did, right? And they did commit mischief. Mischief is
blocking streets, and
it's a crime, right?
All sorts of things,
so, but there has to be the blind application of justice. What happens to Tamara should be what happens to other people, like Black Lives Matter. It should be equal and the same.
Yeah.
What happened to First Nations who were blockading with rifles and guns, and they were breaching the peace, right? And what happened to them for that? Well, they were fighting, and I'm not sure I disagree with them, that they were fighting against an unjust law, right? And in the end, what was the consequence of that? They broke the law, right? So we have to have, I think so my answer to Ted would be, I agree. Yeah. We have to defend the rule of law. We have to operate under the rule of law, but we can't have just some people have to follow the rule of law. It has to be applied equally to everybody, or we should be protesting that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And your book is really like the long game. Do you talk about how to have an influence on people's beliefs? Like if people's beliefs have gone this far off course and they've lost like the core values, how do you how do you go about changing people's beliefs or bringing them back?
Yeah. Well, I guess so. Let's look and say, do we think in 1500 people had those beliefs? But by 1800, some people did. And so how did that happen, right? So people's beliefs are changeable, right? And look around the world today, like some people in some countries believe in this, and most people in other countries don't, right? Like what's happening in modern day China is not a system based on the idea that the individuals have these rights that the government can't take away. They've got them all on social credit scores on their iPhones or their telephones, right? So these ideas and beliefs do change, and so how did they change in the first place? How can you change them again? But I think the answer is yes, you can affect people's. I think you can affect people's beliefs, but you have to campaign or engineer or teach or inform or whatever word you want to use. But my point is, it has to be absolutely constant. And just like some of the American revolutionaries said, what was it? Freedom has to be okay. The tree of freedom or liberty has to be occasionally fed by the blood of patriots. But what they were recognizing is you can't just stop and say I won. And it's over, and then drift through 2 or 3 or 4 generations and expect the 4th or 5th generation to even understand what the first generation fought for, right?
Yeah. So I mean, maybe that is as simple as it gets. Is it comes down to blood at some point? Like that's what it does in other countries.
It's called metaphorically blood, right? For the purpose of this conversation, where we are in Canada today. But if you let it go too far, it'll come down to real blood, right?
Right. That's right. Yeah. Like there is bloodshed in other countries around the world frequently over things like this.
Things we take for granted.
For sure. Right. And I think I fully agree with you that we take it for granted the peace, the relative peace that we experience in the country that we live in. But is it a one-way street? Do we have to occasionally correct it, like judicially or politically? Like, I think the question of separation is really comes down to this idea of like, can you do it? Can we actually achieve some form of unity across this country, or do we actually need to seek unity on a smaller geographical areas rather than like the whole expanse of Canada in order to maintain some of that peace through common consensus of what good looks like, or what direction we should be heading, or what developments we should be endeavoring towards?
Yeah. Well, I look at the European model and maybe look at it under the initial Maastricht Treaty as opposed to the current one, where it feels like Brussels is meddling a bit too much in countries' affairs. But even today in modern day Europe, do you think Brussels is telling schools in Italy that they can't teach their kids Italian? I don't think that's happening, right? So the idea that Italy is Italy and it's a nation is well accepted, and it has a lot of sovereignty over simple decisions like we can teach our kids Italian if we want to, right?
Sure.
Notwithstanding the fact that they're part of a united Europe. So these things are not exclusive.
Fair. Yeah.
What I would say that the problem in Canada, although in some ways on paper provinces have as much or better rights than American states, in terms of the way the system is applied
currently,
the federal government is able to to interfere in provincial jurisdiction, and it's not easy for the provinces to fight back. In America, when they try to interfere in state jurisdiction, they're able to fight back because they have an elected Senate, and they also have a Supreme Court that is affirmed by the Senate, which makes sure that there's judges that worry about regional interests, because there's not a single senator in there that isn't there to protect a regional interest, right? So we don't have that. We have our Supreme Court
But Quebec does a little bit.
Yeah, but even Quebec, the 3 justices from Quebec are appointed by the federal government. So if you're going to find somebody in Quebec who's going to be more likely to favor the federalist point of view, you might want to pick that one, right?
Right. Okay.
And so I think we do have a court in Canada that has tended to I mean, not always. Obviously, they're independent court. They come to independent-minded decisions. I don't think there's anything that suggests that these justices are not competent people. But everybody has biases and points of view, and I don't think our federal government is trying to find justices that are worried about Alberta rights. They're worried about justices that are going to go along with the federal
Right.
view of the Constitution more often than the other one. Opposite United States, right?
Not to
Because of the way
mention
system is.
the lack of representation. Like there is a disparity in terms of Western representation.
And we don't have we don't have that countervailing or counterbalancing regional body, because our Senate, which is in theory representing regional interests, is still also appointed by the federal government. Like we've seen the senators that get appointed from Alberta. Do we see any of them that are being appointed because they stand up for Alberta rights? I don't think so, right?
No.
So there's a bit of a flaw. But just get back to your main point. I just think in the world today, do you really want to be an island like North Korea? I mean, there's a bad example. It's not a good analogy. But who in the world wants to be an island and not be interconnected with the world? So why would this idea of in my paper that I talked about, it talks about responsible government completely within the rule of law, completely within our unwritten and written Constitution, and just says, look, Canada became independent of Britain. How did that happen?